Right, so this is a suggestion via Patreon. The name of the video is, what did Cleopatra look like? Facial reconstructions revealed with history. Let's go and jump into it. But really quickly, though, I understand like the urge or need to kind of learn some of this information because mainly that wild, false documentary that was put out by Jada Pinkett Smith on Netflix. Fully aware, guys, right? I would honestly say, again, that she's mainly European, guys, right? I mean, Greek and Macedonian is for the most part is what makes up all of her DNA. There's one, obvious blank spot in her history, pretty much based off of her, either her grandmother or her great-grandmother, one of these people. They were not recorded because they were not of noble birth. They were somewhat of a lady of the night, guys, right? So that only makes up roughly, 10-20% or so of her missing DNA, at least with trying to figure out exactly who she is, right? There are many like visual depictions of her, be it on coins or statues or paintings even, right? So we kind of knew what she kind of looked like based off of the cultures that have painted her, right? Now, there are many, many depictions of her, obviously, but the ones that would probably mean the most would be coming from countries that actually cared more about realism, more so than just like the vision of the person, if that makes any sense, right? But yeah, so she's been depicted as dark hair, brown eyes, right? Also red hair, brown eyes. And that's just what she is, guys, right? Let's stick to the facts and less of the, I don't know, guys, the hopes and dreams of certain extremist groups, let's say, right? Let's get it. Let's jump into it.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Royalty Now Studios, where I reimagine famous figures from the past as modern day people. Today's question is, what did Cleopatra look like? Now, this is the subject of much debate, mostly because of her reputation for being so beguiling a character in history. I want to walk through what we know and we don't know about Cleopatra's appearance, as well as, of course, show some of my modern-day recreations of one of her statues. So if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I have 2 versions of Cleopatra already, but I did make a 3rd that is a new version, so I'm excited to show that one. I'm crediting my research sources in the description below, so if you want to access those for further reading, you can go ahead. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at royalty_now_, where I post these images along with their history. So let's start with what we do know about Cleopatra. First of all, Cleopatra was mesmerizing.
I don't think she was mesmerizing in like specifically the looks department, right? Overall, mainly, who she was as a person pretty much made her in almost every situation. Again, I don't think that she was like classically beautiful.
She was someone that could charm absolutely anyone. She threw amazing parties, she knew how to dress to impress, and spoke several languages. Her intelligence was really off the charts, and this was said to be the most intriguing thing about her.
Right.
So there is one account by Plutarch saying that her beauty in itself was not altogether incomparable, nor such as to strike those who saw her. So that's a really common refrain about her, and that's, I think, why people believe that maybe her physical beauty was not unparalleled, but her charm was really immense. But Plutarch also goes on to say, and some of these are a little paraphrased, he also said she had already seen for herself the power of her beauty to enchant Julius Caesar, and that she was a woman who was conscious of her personal beauty and intensely proud of it. So he is then kind of contradicting himself, saying that she did have this immense physical beauty as well. And Dio said,
but I mean, we can kind of visually see based off of the paintings. This is kind of what I'm referring to more so than Plutarch's overall, the quotables, let's say.
As for she was a woman of surpassing beauty, and at the time when she was in the prime of her youth, she was most striking. She also possessed most charming voice and a knowledge of how to make herself agreeable to everyone. So she just had such...
I would say that very specific thing is not extremely relevant here, because most women that have existed throughout history, throughout the planet, are generally much prettier when they're like growing up, guys. That's just what it is. It's humans.
Such social and emotional intelligence. What we also know is we know about her basic facial structure. And luckily, we have a lot of sources. There's
Coffee,
a lot
guys.
of images of Cleopatra that still exist for us today. So Cleopatra had many coins minted in her image that still survive today, and they all bear the profile of a woman with a strong aquiline nose, full lips, and a small sloping forehead. They all have this consistency in the way that she's portrayed. Luckily for us, Cleopatra visited Rome several times, and her likeness was captured by the Roman sculptors. Of course, there are many depictions of Cleopatra as well in Egyptian art, but Egyptian art really is more symbolic than meant to represent the specific person. However, during the late Republic, when Cleopatra was alive and visiting there when she was with Julius Caesar, the Romans liked realistic portraiture. I also mentioned that in my video about the appearance of Octavian Augustus and my other one about Livia, his wife. So their statues tried to capture the individual characteristics of a person more like a modern photograph. So even small things like wrinkles and asymmetries were captured. And I do believe they are a pretty reliable indicator of looks.
Absolutely.
Also, Cleopatra lived 2 years in Rome where she was in a relationship with Julius Caesar.
Had a
So her
son.
presence was really real there, and many people became fascinated by Egyptian culture as a result of her residency. Also, she was a very visible public figure, and there were many statues of her erected throughout Rome, including an alleged giant statue of Cleopatra that Julius Caesar placed in a Roman temple, which caused
didn't
quite
like
the
that,
scandal. Cleopatra aligned herself strongly with the goddess Isis, so she would even dress as Isis in public at public parties in Rome. And Isis is essentially the Egyptian equivalent to the Roman goddess Venus. And so there were Roman statues showing her dressed as Venus with a cherub on her shoulder, and that was possibly meant to represent her son with
Yeah, the
Julius
son.
Caesar's Caesarion.
It was the sun, guys.
Some other images we have of her are 3 possible,
Allegedly.
although unconfirmed, frescoes of her that are found at Pompeii. And they're supposed to be Cleopatra because of the Hellenistic royal diadem that's shown. She's wearing this kind of crown that was characteristic of her dynasty, as well as this melon hairstyle that she wears in nearly every depiction of her.
And notice the hair color in this depiction.
So 2 of them also include a baby on her shoulder or a boy.
But I think the reason why a lot of the times show red may just be the dye or paint or whatever they use at the time just fading due to age. I think that probably they try to get as close to brown as humanly possible, but it just looks red because I don't think that her hair was red specifically from that region. I'm sorry. And her skin was not like extremely pale. And I think that that's kind of what happens when someone has red hair. I think when they have red hair, they are extremely pale, right? So I think it's a dye, guys.
Boy standing over her, which, as I just mentioned, could be
sun.
that cherub or Caesarian figure on her shoulder, kind of reflecting that Venus imagery that she had in Rome proper.
Right.
So there are a couple things that we don't know for sure about Cleopatra's appearance, and that is her exact ethnic background. Now, we do have some pretty good guesses and likelihoods. Cleopatra is from a really solid Macedonian Greek family. So basically, a bunch of Greeks ruled Egypt for a while during what's known as the Ptolemaic dynasty. And they're descended from Ptolemy, who was a general and friend of Alexander the Great, and they were both Greek. Over the years, the Ptolemies became quite inbred, and that's because they mostly chose to marry other Macedonian noblewomen
Until
and
there
men.
were no more.
And as soon as they ran out of those
Yeah.
outside Macedonian noblewomen, they kind of started marrying their siblings to
Right.
keep the royal blood in the family. There are also some Persian and Middle Eastern blood in her line as well. The Ptolemies kept pretty clear records of who they married and their children, and that's because they were ruling royals. So they tried to record everything that was going on in their dynasty. And so most of their ancestry is pretty easily verifiable, but there are 2 blank spaces in Cleopatra's family
women,
tree,
right?
and that's her grandmother and her mother.
Yeah.
And so these aren't necessarily like the biggest mystery or anything. There are some very strong likelihoods and guesses, but it's more just like we've never found the exact record saying this woman was Cleopatra's grandmother and this woman was her mother. Cleopatra's grandmother was allegedly a concubine, so her ancestry is unrecorded. It's likely that she was Greek, just because the Ptolemies loved everything Greek and kept everything really close-knit Greek around them. But this is the first blank in her lineage. So that could have been anyone. That could have been a native Egyptian. That could have been a sub-Saharan African woman. That could have been a European woman. It's totally unknown.
Yeah, but that literally makes up for not even a meaningful amount of her DNA. And I think most people, when they try to say that she's something that she's not, they are basing it a lot of the times off of that if they have any intelligence, right? But if they're just saying Cleopatra looks like this, just to say that, then, there's really no conversation to be had. But some of the intelligent ones that you'll literally sit and have a conversation with will bring up the grandmother, right? But again, that still doesn't make up enough percentage, right? That doesn't make her something that she's not, because, I don't know, 15, 20% of her DNA does not magically make her something different. You get what I mean? But all right, it's good.
And the second blank
She could be part something, but
is Cleopatra's mother. Cleopatra's mother was most likely Queen Cleopatra V Tryphena, and that's the recorded queen of Ptolemy, who was Cleopatra's father at the time of Cleopatra's birth. Yeah. But as I said, there's just no record of it anywhere. Now, it would be kind of a big deal if Cleopatra was illegitimate. It probably would have been made note of somewhere. Most Romans didn't like Cleopatra at all, and they were also not shy when it came to calling people bastards, so they probably would have mentioned it. So I do think she was probably a legitimate queen of Egypt at that time, the daughter of the reigning king and queen. To boil it down, only 25% of Cleopatra's ethnic makeup is totally certain, and that puts her squarely as a quarter European and some Middle Eastern. And I would also consider 50% of her makeup through her presumed mother, Cleopatra V, to be fairly certain as well, just because it makes 75. I just think that the historical likelihood is kind of on the side of that. So that would make her 75% European and some Middle Eastern. Now, the other 25% is totally unknown as of now, and that's from her grandmother, who was a concubine. So do we know anything about her hair or eye color? So I'm going to work off the assumption that Cleopatra was...
Guys, DNA is so weird, right? And the reason why I say this is because, guys, I've done my DNA test, and I can tell you, the things that are inside of me as a human walking around is crazy. A little bit of everything. Like, and I mean that. Largest percent would be 38%, which would be West African, and then 33% Italian. Because I don't see that, right? I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to walk around and be like, hey, I'm Italian today, guys, right? I think 8%. No. 10% Ashkenazi Jewish, right? Then the rest of it basically is all Polynesian, which is I pretty much knew that, right? But the thing about it is, I'm not going to walk around and be like, hey, today I am Italian, bro. Come on, man.
75% Greek and Middle Eastern. So based on that, it's easy to assume that she had the skin tone of a Greek or Middle Eastern woman, and I would say dark hair and eyes, but there's actually some evidence to the contrary. So I've made a few.
Oh, that's Italian from Sicily mainly, which is from Gela, Sicily, to be exact, which I understand. I kind of already knew that was coming anyway.
Two depictions of her with dark hair, and let's check those out.
Well, she very much so aged her. Like in the coins that we have of her, it looks like she was like in her 40s or something, guys. They definitely brought her down into the age where she was probably like super pretty, just because she was young, right? That's solid depiction.
Greek
Great
women,
job.
Middle Eastern women having dark hair, is that there are a couple of depictions of her with red hair that were made during her lifetime.
Yeah.
There's many Greeks that have lighter hair. Alexander the Great himself, a very famous Greek, had blonde or reddish hair, and many Mediterranean folks do too. So those three
Yeah, but look at the DNA of Alexander the Great. Like, look at his family tree. You'll understand why he had blonde hair.
Frescoes from Pompeii show Cleopatra with reddish or brownish reddish hair. Yeah. And there's also a small cameo image showing Cleopatra with red hair.
Guys, tell me that's not the dye, bro. Yeah, guys, I'm definitely gonna go for the darker brown and dark brown eyes. Even still to today, this looks a lot more to that very specific region on Earth. All right, listen. So I've never actually encountered anything like this, right? I've seen some random facial reconstructions, but I've never encountered this. Her channel here. I think it's solid. I think that if she's giving history lessons along with, giving facial reconstructions, and she's the one that is creating this piece of art. It's amazing. Follow her, guys. She's obviously really good at this, guys. Absolutely. Not a single complaint. I would like to see more. If you guys want me to see more, just let me know in the comments which ones we should be checking out, guys. And yeah, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day and enjoy your day thoroughly.